If you celebrate while your sister is suffering, you are dancing on her grave. My mother stood in my kitchen, blocking the refrigerator, holding out her hand like a debt collector. Transfer the $15,000 right now, she hissed. Ellie owes dangerous people money, and they gave her until Friday. You want to throw a party? Fine. But know that you are killing your sister. I didn't scream. I switched into triage mode. I grabbed her wrist with the same grip I used to restrain thrashing patients in the trauma unit, marched her to the door, and threw the deadbolt. Before I tell you what I did when she tried to snatch my phone to force the transfer, drop a comment. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it for you? I want to see how far this story travels. I slid down to the floor, my back against the cold wood of the door. The adrenaline didn't leave my body all at once. It drained out slowly, leaving my hands shaking so hard I couldn't unlock my phone. It wasn't fear. It was the physical recoil of severing a limb. For 29 years, I had been the family's life support system, and I had just pulled the plug. The kitchen was dark, lit only by the streetlights filtering through the blinds, but my mind was playing a highlight reel of the last 3 years. I closed my eyes and saw the holidays, not turkey dinners or unwrapping gifts. I saw the fluorescent lights of the trauma unit on Christmas Eve, while Ellie was posting photos from a yacht in Ibiza captioned, "Healing my soul." I was doing chest compressions on a drunk driver who didn't want to be saved, while Ellie was finding herself in Aspen on my parents' dime. I was holding the hand of a grandmother who was terrified to die alone. That $15,000 wasn't just a bank transfer. It was blood money. It was 3 years of missed birthdays, skipped lunches, and double shifts where I came home smelling like antiseptic and death. It was the safety net I had built to prove that I didn't need them. And Deborah had walked in here and demanded it like it was loose change found in a couch cushion. That was her superpower. That was how she kept the ecosystem running. I call it the tyranny of tears. Deborah didn't use fists or shouting to get what she wanted. She used Ellie's fragility as a weapon. For a decade, the narrative had been the same. Ellie is sensitive. Ellie is struggling. Ellie is at risk. If I refused to give up my scholarship money, or my time, or my apartment, I wasn't just being selfish. I was pushing my sister toward the ledge. Deborah had turned extortion into a moral obligation. She made me feel like an executioner every time I said no. If you don't pay, her blood is on your hands. That was the unspoken contract. But tonight, the contract had expired. I looked at the banking app still open on my phone screen. The balance was safe. But the numbers mocked me. 15,000 was a lot. But it was a fraction of what they had already taken. I thought about the $60,000. My grandmother had left me a UTMA trust fund, meant to transfer to me when I turned 21. I had planned to use it for nursing school, but on my 21st birthday, when I went to the bank, the account was empty. 0. Deborah had cried then, too. She told me the market had crashed, that administrative fees and bad investments had eaten it all. She sobbed so hard I ended up comforting her. I took out student loans. I worked nights. I believed her because the alternative was believing my own mother was a thief. But sitting on the floor, the fog finally lifted. Markets don't eat $60,000 without a paper trail. Administrative fees don't drain an account to exactly 0. Ellie had gotten in trouble with a credit card that same year. The math had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to do the equation. Deborah hadn't come here tonight because Ellie was suicidal. She came here because the well had run dry, and she needed to refill it before the loan sharks broke Ellie's legs. She wasn't protecting her daughter. She was protecting her investment. I stood up. My legs were steady now. I walked to the window and looked out at the empty street. They weren't done. Deborah wouldn't stop because I locked a door. She was desperate. And desperate people don't retreat. They escalate. I needed to stop thinking like a daughter and start thinking like a forensic investigator. I needed evidence. I needed a paper trail. And most of all, I needed to make sure that when they came back, and they would come back, I was the one setting the trap. My phone rang at 8:02 in the morning. It was Marco, the owner of the resort where I was supposed to be hosting my graduation party in 3 days. I answered, expecting a question about the menu, or the seating chart. Instead, I heard a voice so tight with tension it sounded like a guitar string about to snap. Sophia, he said. Do not speak. Just listen. Your mother is here. In my office. My stomach dropped through the floor. The venue was 40 minutes from my apartment. Deborah hadn't wasted a second. She's crying, Marco whispered. It's a performance, Sophia. I've seen bad acting before. But this is terrifying. She's telling my front desk staff that you had a psychotic break last night. She says you've been involuntarily committed to a mental health facility, and that you're a danger to yourself. I gripped the phone until my knuckles turned white. She wasn't just canceling the party. She was salting the earth. She was building a narrative that would destroy my credibility, my career, and my sanity, all to cover her tracks. If I was crazy, then nothing I said about the stolen money mattered. If I was locked up, I couldn't stop her. She wants the deposit back, Marco continued. She says she needs the $15,000 in cash immediately to pay for your admission to the private facility. She's screaming that the ambulance is waiting, and I'm holding up your medical care. The old Sophia would have screamed. The old Sophia would have jumped in her car, driven there doing 90, and caused a scene that would have proven Deborah right. I felt the heat rising in my chest. The urge to defend myself. To shout that I was fine. That she was the liar. But then I took a breath. I held it for 4 seconds. I let it out. Triage. If I stopped her now, if I just called the police and had her removed, it was a family dispute. It was a he said, she said. She would walk away with a warning, and she would find another way to get the money. She would go to my landlord. She would go to my bank. She wouldn't stop until she had fed the beast that was Ellie's debt. But if she signed for that money, Marco, I said, my voice deadly calm. Did you give it to her? No. I told her our policy is to mail checks in 30 days. She went ballistic. She started throwing things. So I pivoted. I told her that because it's a medical emergency, I could make an exception. What kind of exception? I told her I have an emergency cash float in the safe for vendor payments. I told her I can give her the cash right now. Today. If she signs a liability waiver. I closed my eyes. It was perfect. It was the bait, and Deborah, blinded by panic and greed, had swallowed it whole. She didn't care about waivers or liability. She only cared about the cash that would keep the loan sharks away from Ellie for another week. Open the safe, I said. Sophia, are you sure? Once she walks out with... She's not walking out, I interrupted. Stall her. Tell her the time lock takes 20 minutes. Tell her you need to photocopy her ID. Give her coffee. Just keep her in that room. What are you going to do? I'm coming down there. And I'm not coming alone. I hung up. My hands were steady now. This wasn't a party cancellation anymore. It wasn't a mother trying to save money. It was attempted grand larceny. It was fraud. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the victim trying to survive the storm. I was the one directing the lightning. I pulled into the service entrance of the resort 20 minutes later. I wasn't alone. Standing by the loading dock was Detective Miller. He wasn't a random private investigator I'd found in the yellow pages. He was Marco's head of security. A retired fraud investigator who had spent 30 years watching people lie for money. He looked like a man who hadn't been surprised since the 90s. Miss Wallace, he said, opening the door to the security booth. Marco briefed me. We have audio and video running in the office. I'm witnessing the interaction as a neutral third party. Does she know you're watching? No. She thinks she's bullying a hotel manager. She doesn't know she's auditioning for a felony. I stepped into the cool, dark room. The wall was covered in monitors, but my eyes locked onto the center screen. There she was. Deborah was sitting in Marco's office, clutching her purse like a life raft. The audio feed crackled to life, and I heard the performance. It was masterful. She was sobbing those heaving, chest-shaking sobs that had made me give up my allowance when I was 10 and my paycheck when I was 20. She's sick, she was wailing to the poor receptionist Marco had left in there to stall her. My daughter is in a locked ward, and the doctors won't start treatment until I pay the admission fee. Do you want her death on your conscience? I watched her wipe her eyes. Then, the moment the receptionist turned away to pour water, Deborah's face changed. The grief vanished, replaced by a sharp, predatory panic. She checked her watch. She checked her phone. She wasn't crying for me. She was terrified of the deadline Ellie's loan sharks had set. It was Friday. The clock was ticking, and I was just the ATM she was trying to smash open. She's good, Miller muttered, crossing his arms. Most people would cut the check just to get her to stop making that noise. That's how she survives, I said, my voice flat. She weaponizes her distress. She makes you feel like a monster for asking for proof. On the screen, Marco entered the room. He looked flustered, playing the part of the overwhelmed business owner perfectly. He was holding a heavy envelope, the cash float. Deborah's eyes snapped to it. She actually stopped crying mid-sob. It was a physical reaction, like a shark smelling blood in the water. The greed was so naked it was almost obscene. Mrs. Wallace, Marco said, sounding apologetic. I'm so sorry for the delay. I have the $15,000 here. I just need to handle the paperwork. Just give it to me, Deborah snapped, reaching out. My daughter is waiting. I understand, ma'am. But because this is a cash refund of a deposit paid by Sophia, I have strict auditing rules. I need to verify that you are the authorized financial proxy. I watched my mother straighten up. She smoothed her skirt. She thought she had won. She thought she had bullied another weak man into submission. She didn't see the cage coming down. My phone buzzed. A text from Marco. Green light? I looked at Miller. He nodded. We're recording. If she lies about her authority now, it's fraud. I looked at the woman on the screen who had birthed me, who had stolen my inheritance, who was currently using my imaginary mental breakdown to rob me. I didn't feel love. I didn't feel hate. I felt the cold precision of a surgeon making the first incision. I typed back. Execute. Marco walked back into the office, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. He wasn't empty-handed. He was holding a thick, cream-colored envelope, the flap tucked in but not sealed. He placed it on the desk between them. It landed with the heavy, distinct thud of hard currency. On the security monitor, I saw Deborah's posture change. She stopped dabbing her eyes. She leaned forward, her gaze fixed on that envelope like a starving animal looking at a piece of meat. The tears evaporated. The grief vanished. It was pure, unadulterated hunger. Mrs. Wallace, Marco said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I'm going out on a limb here. My accountant is going to have my head for releasing a cash float without a 30-day hold. I appreciate it, Deborah said, her hand inching toward the envelope. You're saving my daughter's life. I know. But because this is such a large irregularity, refunding a deposit paid by Sophia, but giving the cash to you, I need to cover my bases for the audit. I need to establish that you are the authorized financial proxy for all her accounts. Deborah nodded impatiently. I am. I told you, she's incompetent. Right. But I see a note here in her file. Marco lied smoothly, glancing at a blank sheet of paper. She mentioned a trust fund from a grandmother that was used for previous expenses. For my records, did you manage that transaction as well? I just need to link the financial authority. I held my breath. This was it. If she denied it, if she said she didn't know about the trust, we only had her for the attempted theft of the party deposit. But if she claimed it, Deborah didn't hesitate. She didn't pause to think why a hotel owner would care about a trust fund from 8 years ago. She was $15,000 away from saving Ellie, and she would have confessed to the Kennedy assassination if it got her that envelope. Yes, she said, her voice clear and authoritative. I handled the trust fund. I signed for the release of those funds personally. I have full power of attorney over all her assets. I control everything. I looked at Miller. He was already typing on his phone. That's it, he murmured. She just admitted to forging the checks. That's identity theft and bank fraud. Let's go, I said. I didn't run. I walked down the hallway with the steady, rhythmic pace of someone walking to a code blue. I reached the office door, turned the handle, and stepped inside. The room went silent. Deborah was reaching for the envelope. When she saw me, her hand froze in midair. For a second, her brain couldn't process it. She blinked, looking from me to the cash, trying to reconcile the psychotic daughter in a locked ward with the woman standing in front of her wearing scrubs and a look of absolute zero. Hello, Mother, I said. Sophia? She stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. What are you? You're supposed to be. Locked up? I finished for her. Suicidal? Dangerous? I walked over to the desk and picked up the envelope. I tucked it under my arm. You really thought I was crazy, didn't you? You thought I was broken enough to let you steal from me again. I'm not stealing, she shrieked, the panic finally setting in. I'm saving your sister. She needs this money, Sophia. They're going to hurt her. Then maybe she shouldn't have borrowed it, I said. But that's not my problem anymore. My problem was the $60,000 you stole from Grandma's trust. But you just solved that problem for me. I didn't. We have it on tape, Deborah. I pointed to the small camera in the corner. You just admitted to Marco and a witness that you signed for those funds. You admitted you impersonated me to access my accounts. That's a felony. That's federal prison time. The color drained from her face, leaving it a sickly, paste white. She looked at Marco, who had dropped the helpful manager act and was now standing with his arms crossed, looking at her with pure disgust. Then the door behind me opened, and Miller stepped in. He wasn't wearing a uniform, but he carried himself with the unmistakable weight of law enforcement. He held up his badge. Ma'am, I'm detaining you for attempted grand larceny, Miller said. I've notified the sheriff's department. They're 5 minutes out. Deborah slumped in her chair, small, defeated. I felt a flicker of pity, the ghost of the daughter I used to be. Then she looked up. Fear hardened into something sharp. She wasn't sorry. She was calculating. She didn't scream or beg. As the reality of the handcuffs settled in, she went perfectly still, then her mouth twitched into a predator's grin. You think you won, she whispered. A recording? Jail? Sophia, you were always short-sighted. She leaned back, cold satisfaction replacing fear. Check your email. My phone buzzed. A priority alert from the state nursing board. Notice of immediate license suspension, pending investigation. The email accused me of narcotics diversion. Photographic proof of stolen oxycodone in my home. I didn't just call the resort, Deborah said softly. I went into your old bedroom at 5 a.m. and found something disturbing. Dozens of pill bottles. Stolen from your hospital. She showed me a photo. My old dresser lined with orange vials bearing my hospital's labels. I sent it at 6, she said. With an anonymous tip that you've been selling them paying for a lifestyle like this party. I knew those pills. They were Ellie's. Deborah had hidden Ellie's prescriptions in my old room for years, and now she'd weaponized her other daughter's addiction to frame me. Drop the fraud charges, Deborah hissed. Call it a misunderstanding. Tear up the waiver. Or you'll never work as a nurse again. I will ruin you. Panic hit like a defibrillator, shock my license, my career, the only thing that was truly mine. Miller watched me, waiting. And then something inside me went quiet. The dead nerve. Years of trauma finally severed the last thread of hope. No anger. No fear. Just clinical detachment. You planted evidence, I said, my voice hollow. You framed me for a felony to cover up a felony. Prove it, she taunted. Your word against a concerned mother. You're right, I said. Except for one thing. I opened my cloud drive and tapped a voicemail, time-stamped 3 a.m. You forgot Ellie is sloppy, I said. When she gets desperate, she leaves a trail. I hit play. Ellie's voice filled the office, shrill, slurred, unmistakable. She begged for the stash from your room. Said Mom wouldn't hand it over anymore because she needed it for leverage. And demanded the oxy or cash because the guys are coming. Deborah's smile vanished. Her face drained white. That voicemail is 12 hours old, I said calmly. She confirms the drugs are hers. She confirms you're holding them for leverage. I looked at Miller. Detective, add 2 charges. Extortion and filing a false report. Deborah realized she hadn't just lost, she'd handed me the weapon. You tried to kill my career, I said. But you just killed your own freedom. And you took Ellie down with you. I handed Miller the phone. The fraud, the drugs, the blackmail. It's all there. Deborah lunged across the desk for the evidence, feral and cornered. Miller stepped back, caught her arm, spun her around. The cuffs snapped shut louder than anything in the room. Deborah Wallace, Miller said flatly. You're under arrest. 6 minutes later, uniformed officers arrived. No sirens, just 2 squad cars at the service entrance, and staff staring as Miller turned over the recorder and the envelope of cash. Deborah fought the whole way out, screaming, She's lying! She's unstable! She's on drugs! I was trying to help her! Through the cruiser window, she locked eyes with me, no love, only distilled hatred. Her lips formed a single word. Ungrateful. I stayed until the cars disappeared. Miller returned, adjusting his cuffs. It's done. Confession? Attempted theft? Extortion? On tape. The D.A. won't drop this. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me yet, he replied. You have a license to save. The next 48 hours blurred into pure efficiency. I went straight for an expedited hair follicle test. The results came back clean. I sent the results to the nursing board with the police report, the extortion details, and Ellie's voicemail. The investigator listened, closed the inquiry, and lifted my suspension before it even hit the public record. But one loose end remained. I drove to Ellie's apartment, used the spare key, and found her on the couch with takeout and reality TV. She muted it, wary. She didn't know about the arrest. Sophia? She mumbled. Did Mom get the money? The guys. They're texting again. Mom is in jail, Ellie. She blinked. What? Bank fraud and extortion, I said. She tried to steal my deposit. And when I stopped her, she tried to frame me for your habit. Ellie lurched upright. No, she said she'd fix it. She said you'd pay. She tried. She failed. I tossed a folder onto the coffee table, and now they're tracing the $60,000 Mom stole from Grandma's trust. She didn't spend it. You did. Your cards, your car, your trips. That makes you a beneficiary. An accomplice. Ellie started crying, practiced. Familiar. I can't go to jail, Sophia. I'm fragile. You have to help me. The old Sophia would have softened. The nerve was dead now. I felt nothing. I'm not here to help you, I said. I'm here to give you a choice. She sniffed. What choice? Mom will claim I stole those pills. I have the voicemail, but your testimony seals it. I leaned in. You can go down as her accomplice, or you testify as a state witness. You tell them she kept the pills in my room, and she forced you to lie. But she's Mom, Ellie whispered. And now she's going to prison for you, I said coldly. Unless you want to join her. I watched survival replace loyalty in her eyes. If I testify, she asked, trembling. Do I get immunity? That's up to the DA, I said, turning to leave. But I'd talk fast. Mom is probably already trying to pin it on you. I walked out and left the door unlocked. I didn't look back. Parasites always look for a new host, and when a host fights back, they eat their own. 3 months later, the party finally happened. No resort, no DJ, no 5-course meal. Just a long table at a local Italian place. Marco, Detective Miller, my ER supervisor, and a few nurse friends. Cheap wine, too much pasta, and for the first time in years, air in my lungs. No dread. No waiting for the next blow. Just breathing. When I got home, a thick letter waited in my mailbox from the county jail, 10 pages of guilt and poison. I didn't open it. I held it over the sink, lit the corner, and watched it curl into ash. Not sad, not triumphant. Clean. Deborah was denied bail. The audit found more than $60,000. Hidden accounts, offshore transfers, even a flight booked for the day after my party. She wasn't just a bad mother. She was a flight risk. As the last ash washed down the drain, I looked around my apartment. New locks, secure accounts, student loans gone. The silence wasn't lonely. It was expensive. I'd paid for it. And it was mine. They say you only get one mother. That's a lie. You get biology, but family is a verb. It's the people who show up when you're bleeding, not the ones holding the knife. You can choose your family. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is fire the people who share your DNA. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes blood is just a stain you have to wash out. If you've ever had to choose between your mental health and your family, leave a heart emoji in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one.